welcome to the Thursday 9050 Roundup with me, Roland Tanner.
I am Joel McLeod.
And it's post-election, so we're not going to talk about any of that because everything's fine and everything's wonderful and it was a terrific time. We're going to talk about, well, to an extent, the next election on the horizon, which is the municipal one. And there's a few developments there, and there's some gossip there. I mean, the big gossip in Hamilton now, which started, actually, I was partly responsible for this while the election was still happening. And when I say responsible, not because I made it up, but because I mentioned it. And that's the question of whether Andrea Horwath might now consider running for mayor of Hamilton, and whether that's a good thing, a bad thing, or what. And well, Joel, you have one set of opinions, and I have.
Yeah.
I don't know what my opinion is. I'm still working on it, basically. But
I my opinion is, I ultimately I don't think she should, and it's not because of electorability. It's more of just the principle of the matter. Of she was a city councillor way back in the day, at the start of her career. Before she ran for the NDP, and then becoming the NDP leader, and then the leader of Her Majesty's loyal opposition at Queen's Park. To say that Andrea Horwath did not have an illustrious career in politics is an understatement. She has represented Hamilton Centre well, I would say. Her track record has been one of positive things for Hamilton Centre. That being said, I do have issues with politicians who constantly just shuffle around jobs. We kind of saw that in the last provincial election of Jason Farr deciding, well, I'm going to run for the Liberals in Hamilton East Stony Creek, albeit that was a failure. But it's this idea of a
humiliating failure. I think we need an adjective there. Let's just say humiliating failure.
But I'm not saying that's going to happen to Andrea running for mayor, but I do think there is a point of this municipal election. There is an appetite for change in Hamilton. We have covered it a lot in this podcast. There is a grassroots movement of we want a new face in at City Hall, and you have to wonder if Andrea is running. Is that really a new face? We know she's established. We know kind of what she would do, and it kind of get the sense of, City Hall is a consolation prize for somebody who doesn't know when to let go.
I know what you mean. I think on the whole, I don't agree because partly because I think she'd win. I mean, I think if she runs, she'll win.
Right.
There's such massive name recognition. She is, even amongst people who've never voted for her and might never vote for her, there is a degree of respect, I think. Someone who's been around for a long time, and she has stature and, unquestionably has stature. I mean, it's almost a separate question was, would she win? And would that be good in that would be a change for Hamilton? And I'd say probably, and I don't think she would let the old guard, well, not so much that Eisenberger lets the old guard get away with stuff. He does let them get away with stuff, and I think she would at least call out some of the more atrocious behavior if it still existed. But there's also, I mean, there is a serious, being leader of a party and being mayor of a city is a very different job.
Right.
You are in provincial and federal politics. You are part of a team. You're very much a team player, and your team is ridiculously loyal to you up until the moment when you get the heave ho.
Well, I mean that's the nature of provincial and federal politics. Is that that party discipline is a key factor, and the leaders know how to use that party loyalty to push forward their agenda. That factor doesn't exist at municipal level.
Yeah, and I think the question, the problem that often happens. I mean, I saw this to an extent with Cam Jackson, who was a former MPP in Burlington. is that you can come in and you expect municipal government to work like provincial government does, and maybe it should, but it doesn't. You cannot come in and hope to be prime minister of a city. That's just not how it works. You've got to be a consensus builder, or if you want a pleasant life, you've got to be a consensus builder, and you've also got to accept, however frustrating it might be, the city staff have, in many ways, the whip hand. Whether they should have the whip hand is another question, but they do, and that's just simply the way it works. So, I somewhat think someone like Andrea Horwath might struggle with that, and take the kind of bull in a china shop approach that can go off the rails and can really not end happily.
Well, the other factor is her old opponent is still going to be there, Doug Ford. Like, at some point, as mayor of one of the largest cities in Ontario, you are going to have to go to the province, kind of hat in hand, and ask for something. I don't know what, but I've never seen where there's never been a major infrastructure project or an initiative that is wanted to be put forward by a city. That's, at some point, they just have to go to the province and say, either we need money or we need permission to do something.
To an extent, yeah, you're right. No, I mean, you're right. One of the traditional way of being a mayor is that you never ruffle the feathers of the province. Again, in the province, even more than the staff, the province holds the whip hand in municipal politics, as we've seen. They can basically vote you out of existence on a whim. And you wouldn't put it past Doug Ford, given that he's already done it in Toronto, to do something similar in Hamilton. So, yeah, that, and maybe this is just me being a clueless dreamer, that the cities were actually more. I think the cities need to start cooperating together rather than cooperating with the province, and that together they have a huge amount of electoral power. Whereas individually, negotiating with the province, they're always in a weak position. So, I mean,
that's the thing.
Every city in the 905 will bitch about the OLT and the fact that their planning decisions get. Well, you can't even get it on the provincial agenda because you're just fighting individual battles. Where it's like, well, why aren't you, through, the whatever it is, Federation of Ontario Municipalities,
the Association of Municipalities of Ontario, like, you would think that you're right. That should be. It's a meeting that the Minister of Municipal Affairs and the Premier will go to, and they always have individual meetings with various mayors, and the mayor kind of, again, goes hat in hand. Oh, we want to build this. We want to fund that, whatever the case may be. And it's kind of like this, you enter the Star Chamber and you petition the king for, can I have permission to do this? And you're right. It goes for a divide and conquer mentality. Exactly. Whereas if instead the mayor's kind of ganged up and said, no, we're going to use this as a united front, and to say, no, we're taking on the OLT. We need major reforms to the OLT going forward. That would be, I think that would be a game changer. Whether or not Andrea would be the person to kind of move that forward, I don't know. Because here's the thing: you say it's about consensus building. My counter argument to that is, if she was a consensus builder, she would be premier right now.
Yeah.
Like we just saw that. Like, she did not build a consensus amongst the people of Ontario to push forward an NDP agenda at Queen's Park.
I picture Andrea Horwath more in the kind of Street Fighter mode, and that's kind of her vibe as leader of the opposition is which is fine. I mean, it's very much the traditional thing that leaders of the opposition do, but So it is very different. I think ultimately, if she chose to run, chose to run. Sorry, I'd welcome that. In that, winners win, and it certainly would. I don't feel that the municipal election in Hamilton has quite come alive yet.
No,
and it needs to. And a really stonking, hot mayoral race will bring with it change at the other levels, because people will come out and vote.
Well, here's the other argument why I'm kind of against former levels of politician running for mayor is there's talk. Bob Bertina has also said that he's interested in throwing his hat in the ring. Mm-hmm. He hasn't done that yet, to my knowledge. He hasn't filed the paperwork.
No. Oh well, yeah. Okay.
He's declared.
He said verbally.
He said publicly, "I want to run," but he hasn't actually, done the work and gone down to City Hall to file the paperwork. So that remains to be seen. But again, it's like where is it a fresh voice? Is my question, and I think that's the attitude that Hamilton. The grassroots of Hamilton want is that, no, we want somebody fresh and new who's accountable to us, not some other power broker within the city. Does Andrea and Bob running feed that narrative? I don't think so. I think it's just, again, another I don't know what the right
no, it's a fair point. It's a fair point, and she was leader of the NDP for a long time, and obviously there's been electoral success. I kind of resent the process of ever saying that someone who repeatedly loses elections has been a success, but in a party context, she's been a success. But innovator, not necessarily. I don't know. So I do think. And you're right. The someone like Keanan Loomis is his problem is that he's a blank slate. It's also his strength is that he's a blank slate. Yes. We simply don't know what he would be like, or we can go by as his public pronouncements, which are progressive and which hit the right notes. But
we'll wait and see.
Again, unfortunately, it's simply. I think he's got a good shout, as long as someone like Andrea doesn't enter the race. Again, it's just politics sucks in terms of the whole name recognition thing. But there you go.
Well, why don't we take a break there for our first sponsor break, and we'll come back with more shenanigans around the region. Okay, and we are back, but we're not leaving Hamilton. That should be said. We're Hamilton, never a dull time. We can say on this podcast. Old friend, maybe not so much friend of the podcast, but Larry Deaney got ruffled some feathers on social media over the course of the weekend. Roland, what did the illustrious former mayor say?
He gets into these conversations. He obviously enjoys it. He enjoys being for want of a more graceful term, shit disturber. I think he obviously takes pleasure in it. So fine, whatever floats your boat, mate. But he in conversation with someone and answering something or other, he managed to both defend two of the more Councillor Jackson, who's been around since Adam was a lad, and is not the worst example on the current crop, but it's certainly one of the old boys, so to speak. So defending him, also defending Terry Whitehead. Saying, well, I think Terry should take a break this time around, but basically saying, he's a good guy and we shouldn't be so nasty to him, despite all the
evidence to the contrary,
endless examples of bad behavior from him. And then took a pot shot at the councillors for wards 1 and 3, who he didn't even name, saying they are bad for Hamilton and they must go. Now, it just so happens that these are two women, which I think is relevant, that they are the two freshest faces on council, having been elected in 2018, and that they are they very much are at the forefront of the newer generation and newer ideas. And that Diani has meanwhile been at the forefront of this narrative that these are somehow, communist revolutionaries trying to overthrow the I don't know what, the hereditary monarchy that is the Hamilton Council. And it's ridiculous, and it's kind of offensive. I mean, it's not offensive to me. I don't care, but I mean,
well, it's offensive to anybody who. I mean, the fact that he puts out on Twitter, he'll name Councillor Jackson by name in this post, but then says, and it doesn't even say councillors, just refers to them as number 1 and 3, is incredibly derogatory. I would say borderline sexist. Maybe even go as far as racist, because Councillor Narendra Nan is of a visible minority. It just, they have names. They've earned the respect. Like, you can respect the office of councillor, and enough to the fact that you may not agree with their policies. That's fair enough. We're a democracy. You are entitled to say, I disagree with your point of view, or your course of action, and the direction you want to take the council. I disagree with that. That's my point. Not debating that, but you have respect. We've never referred to as Councillor Whitehead as I don't even forget what ward he 13, serves.
I know. Yeah, I forget the number. I'm sorry. But Hamilton low enough to know yet.
I will say he's earned the respect that we say he's referred to as Councillor Whitehead, same as Councillor Marula and Councillor Jackson. Mayor Eisenberger, they have earned the right. The position is still valid. You don't just derogatory. And then, in a follow-up tweet, don't take it so serious. Like, don't, he had followed up with a follow-up tweet saying, don't be so literal and don't be such a bleeding heart. It's like, no, you don't have the right to tell me not to be offended, or to not look at when somebody says, I'm offended by that, to say, oh, well, you don't have any right to be. You have a right to be offended. More importantly, as a former mayor, as a former candidate for the federal Liberal Party in Hamilton East Stony Creek back in the day, you should know words matter. The phrases you use matter. You do not get to shy away from misspoken words and say, don't take it seriously. Don't be so literal. Suck it up and deal with it. If you want to be engaged in the political discourse of a city, you don't have the right to shy away from it. Own what you said. If you misspoke, or if you said, I said that in a fit of passion, I'm sorry, I misspoke. My apologies. I apologize to the people in question. Okay, fine. I can accept that. But to stand by and say that the rest of us are too sensitive, maybe we're not the ones who are sensitive here.
Yeah, I just don't get how you can defend. And he was defending Terry Whitehead in one breath, whose behavior seems just indefensible. Like mental health concerns, whatever. If and according to Terry Whitehead, he doesn't have any, so we can only go on his word for this. That is no excuse for consistent, just terrible, disruptive behavior. And I just say, anybody who wants to see John Paul Danko kind of gave a spiel in council the other day about that behavior, which was a really good and frankly entertaining kind of takedown of everything to do with Terry Whitehead, and I thought it was wonderful. But again, the Diani kind of defending that on one hand, and then attacking people who, whether you agree with them or not on particular policies, are respectful, professional. Whenever I've watched council meetings, Councillor Nan and Councillor Wilson are always, completely professional, completely reasonable, completely behaving how you're supposed to behave in a council chamber. The only reason they don't like them is, well, A, because they're strong women, and old white men really hate strong women.
What's up with that?
Yeah, I mean, and it's like, do you realize how stupid you look when you behave like this. I mean, we saw it in Mississauga recently with the councillor whose car was vandalized. I certainly think there was an element of that in Burlington in 2018 with again, I'll quote Marianne Mead Ward, a phrase that she uses. It was like, well-behaved women don't get things done.
Right.
I mean, but being a non-well-behaved woman gets you just so much abuse from the old guard at whatever level of government you're at, and I will completely go along with Marianne on that count. That's definitely a thing that happens. But we're seeing it here. Why doesn't John Paul Danko get the same mouthful of abuse as those two? Well, partly because he's probably more, Deanne's supposed to be a liberal somewhere along the lines, or was, and Danko's maybe more of that kind of centrist politically. But really, there's no difference between them other than that two are women and one's a man.
Right. Well, here's the thing: you want for somebody who demands so much respect be given to the old guard or to himself, so little being given out is quite telling. You cannot demand. You can't sit there and say, "I demand respect, and I demand to be heard, and I demand to be listened to," and at the same time be so dismissive of people who, and their rights. They are elected. They have supporters. They have earned the right to give their opinions in council chambers. As much as, and I will say this, Terry Whitehead has earned the right to give his opinion in council chambers. He got elected. We vehemently disagree with a lot of those points of view, and quite frankly, to the point where say you've lost the respect of the populace and your fellow councillors because you don't give the respect. Like
you don't. You have the right to be the councillor that you want to be within the rules of procedure, within the rules of decorum and civility that we expect of elected officials, and that's what Whitehead doesn't have. He is a hand grenade lobbed into the center of the council chamber at every meeting he attends, and thankfully he doesn't attend all of them, or even the majority of them.
You can't be effective if every time you walk into a boardroom or into a meeting room, your first reaction is, "I'm going to kick over the table and throw the papers up in the air and say, demand that you listen to what I have to say." Nobody, ask anybody in the course of time, no matter what business you're in, nobody respects that person. Nobody. You sit there quietly, you wait for them to leave, and you say, "Okay, can now we begin the business of the day?" That's what this is equivalent. You don't show disrespect to people who, quite frankly, have earned it. And they haven't, in my opinion, Councillors Wilson and Councillor Knott have not thrown that respect away. You may not agree with their politics or their point of view. That's perfectly fine. But to say they haven't earned your respect, that's telling on you, I think, and your values.
And I just don't get, what they are supposed to have done that is so bad, other than
some new ideas.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, is new so chat? Like, that's what I guess it comes back to the old white man argument. It's like, is that the danger here? Is that, it's new and different, therefore it must be bad? Like, it just scare you that much that maybe this is an idea worth pursuing. Maybe just experiment with it and see what happens. Is that terrifying?
Thus far, I think the two councillors concerned have ignored this kind of stuff, as is the usual thing to do in politics, is just pretend it doesn't exist and eventually it will go away. But they both actually responded to the tweet with some panache, and Councillor Wilson pointed out, it's like, this is a guy who's just pissed off because he wanted a free seat on council for a year in Stony Creek after Brad Clark was elected to Ottawa, and they were part of the majority of councillors who voted against Deanne. Now, part of the majority perhaps also at the forefront of organising that majority. but nevertheless, there's a huge amount of sour grapes here from a guy who had his time, won his elections, and it's just annoyed now that he's no longer relevant. And sorry, Larry, you're just making a fool of yourself. You really are making a fool of yourself, and no one's buying what you're selling. The people who are going to be voting in the election, those councillors are going to be re-elected very easily because they've been outstanding. And shut up. If you want to defend the councillors in the other wards, sure, go for it. That's your right. But the voters who are going to be voting in Terry Whitehead's ward don't care about Maureen Wilson or Narinda Nan because they're not voting for her. It's just
all right. Well, we have one final thing to chat about, and it's still a bit of an update on in Burlington. There's a bit of an update in terms of city council's policies.
So the city council. So the root of the whole Ward 4 closed session meeting stramash. I know that's probably not a word that's used much in Canada, but anyway, fight, whatever, conflict, controversy, was that for the last 2 years, Shawna Stolte had been pressing for an update to the closed meeting session protocols. And basically the other councillors had resisted this and said, there's no need, it's fine. All this exploded into the Integrity Commissioner report of a few weeks ago. And a review by the closed session meeting dudes, A-list and the people who are paid to sort of check if closed session meetings are within the rules. And finally, it also resulted in a review of the closed session meeting protocols. Now, the mayor has pretended, and other councillors will pretend and have pretended that, actually, this came from other councillors. It wasn't, we're always supportive of this. No, they weren't. They were forced into it. And when it looked like Shawna Stolte might get her name on it, they made sure that they stole the thing and put their name on it, and they passed it. So that's the kind of small-minded bullshit that goes on in councils across the province. I'm not going to say it's unique to Burlington, but no, this came as a result of Shawna Stolte's pressure. There is now an updated closed session meeting protocol. I haven't looked at the details of it to see in detail if there are changes and what those changes are. But congratulations, at least, to Shawna Stolte for having got it that far. And no, they'll have found a way to make sure that her name is not attached to it in any way, shape, or form, but it's entirely down to her that it's happened. So well done on that front.
You have to wonder the whole rigmarole over disciplining her and sending her to the Integrity Commissioner. Like, what? Here's the thing. Her whole beef was, we don't have a policy. Like, there's no guidance. It's just whenever we talk about something that remotely at some point we might have to go into closed session, well, the entire meeting goes into closed session. Well, that's overkill. And we don't actually have a guidance of when exactly is it that we should be going? That's what she was ultimately asking for, is I want to know the exact topics that we should be going in and out of an in-camera session, as opposed to saying, we're going to talk about the Robert Bateman High. We want to talk about purchasing it. Okay, so the entire meeting has to be in camera. Like, we can't figure out what exactly we should, some of this has to be in public. This is using public money to buy public land. Don't do this behind closed doors. I find this interesting, though, that now she's, the fact that a change in policy has come forward kind of implicitly says she had a point. She was right. There was no policy. We needed a policy in doing it. And so, to me, it comes across a bit petty to have city council all of a sudden now say, oh, well, we had a disciplinary because she broke the rules. Like, okay, maybe. Do you need to fine her 5 days salary? It was like, it's kind of one of the things like maybe if you're going to admit to her, like, well, you had a point. We don't have a policy. We need a policy.
She pushed it to the extreme, and not.
Well, I have to get to this point.
She pushed the issue, made herself unpopular with her colleagues, made herself unpopular with staff, and again, can I quote Marianne Mead Ward? Well-behaved women don't succeed in politics. Shawna Stolte was a badly behaved woman in politics, and she's, to be honest, followed the Marianne Mead Ward playbook of like, I am not going to stop. I'm going to keep on bitching about this, even if I'm the one person on council, even if I'm driving you crazy, and I'm going to stick with it until you give me a concession. Now, she's got a concession. I don't think it's going to, I haven't looked at the new protocol to see if there's any significant changes, and I will do that. And I'll also be interested to see how agendas and minutes coming out of council, to see if there's any change in how they're being put together.
It does say something.
It'll be interesting to see. But
it does say something that that role reversal, right? That Marianne Mead Ward, when she was first elected as a city councilor for Ward 2, came on as kind of this rebel with a cause. We're going to change the way things are done. And she gets to become mayor, and all of a sudden it's very much, did we have to the rules are there, we have to follow the rules are there for a reason, you have to respect the process. And yeah, you're right. Shawna Stolte said, well, no, these rules don't make any sense. They lead to more secrecy, they lead to things being done behind closed doors in a democracy, which is very uncomforting. And she kind of kept kicking the door open so the rest of us could see what's going on. I think in the end, like the winner here is Shawna Stolte. Like they can hide her name off the final passage of the bylaw, whatever. But in the end, I mean, we all know why this came about. It's because of Shawna Stolte.
Yeah, and I absolutely think that's the case, and I felt that was likely to be the case from the outset. It's like, you want to now. I mean, I think Shawna was. I'm using first names here. I mean, I know Shawna probably better than most of the other councillors, or probably any of the other councillors. However, so bias, whatever you want to say, fine. But yeah, I mean, it's like if you're gonna defend the status quo, and there's another councillor who's going to take issue with the status quo, 9 times out of 10, the one taking issue with the status quo is going to come out looking like the good guy. And I think Shawna Stolte has absolutely done that. But I mean, I think deservedly so. And I think Marianne Mead Ward, if she wasn't mayor in a previous council, in a previous situation, would have been lining up with Shawna Stolte to be on her side. And I think it's tragic that now we have this, oh, well, no, everything's fine, and, don't break the rules, and this kind of, it's exactly the kind of arrogance that drove people nuts under the old council. And we're seeing it with spades from councillors like, I'm sorry, Rory Nessan, but you are the worst defender. This kind of institutional arrogance of how dare you question who we are? How dare you question the way we do things? It's like, screw it. No, that's what we're supposed to do, is question you. We can't trust politicians. They screw us over. It's like, realize where you come from, realize why you were elected, realize what just because you feel that you're a good guy and you won and that you're trustworthy doesn't mean that you're different and exempt from the same things that those guys that you booted out were subject to. So it's the shortness of memory that gets me. It's like, do you not remember how you used to be? But and very disappointing from I'm going to name Roy Nissan in particular, and Councillor Gail Braith for certainly in Nissan's case, kind of being a champion of could not line himself up more closely with Marianne Mead Ward if he tried when he was running for election, and since then, and kind of like, we're the new brooms and we're going to sweep. And then becoming this kind of face of small c conservatism on council, of being the most vocal defender of that institutional self-righteousness that I loathe. I don't know why you would want to do that. I mean, it's going to be fine. This election in Burlington is probably going to be very boring. If one or two councillors change, that would be the most. And it's very difficult to change councillors, and those change elections don't come along very often. But nevertheless, eventually this stuff will catch up with you. And also, why do you want to be that guy? Why do you want to be that how dare you guy on council? It's a loathsome position, and I do not understand why you would be in politics and want to be like that.
You know what? Let's round off the episode on that, because I have nothing more to add.
That was a good rant. I'm sorry.
It was. It's a good way to close off the episode. So thanks very much, everyone. We'll be back next week with another episode of the 905er. Until then, take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns, or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.
To make the most out of this life and optimize your personal wellness? Then check out the Natural Man Podcast. Join me, host Mike C., as we explore all areas of human wellness, physical, mental, and emotional. Learn strategies to optimize your own well-being and be in the driver's seat of your own health. Remember, your doctor works for you. Learn biohacks, neurohacks, ways to improve sleep, and ways to optimize your body and your mind. Check us out on Apple, Spotify, the Fountain app, and at naturalmanpodcast.com.